That's cinema, baby.
No, Mr. Wilson. I don't have to take that kind of talk from anyone.
That's right, you don't. How about going outside and trying to kick me around?
I'm not supposed to fight with the guests, Mr. Wilson.
I'm not a guest tonight, you yellow bastard. I happen to be an intruder.
Hello. And welcome to The Good. Am I going too fast? The Pod and the Ugly? I don't want to fry anyone's brain, having watched the films that we watched this week. This is Thomas. I'm back. We're part of a film podcast where we pair movies and get a better understanding of creators, usually notable directors, but we've also done some actors and some writers. We often bring guests on, but fuck that this season. We're doing a 4x4, and I am one of your co-hosts, Thomas.
I'm also a co-host. My name is Ryan.
I am also a co-host. My name is also Ryan. And we are joined this season, and we're doing his 4x4. We're joined by Jack, who picked the director.
Hi.
Yay!
Woo.
Who are you? What is your name?
I'm also Ryan.
God, this is going to get really confusing.
Okay, so Ryan, you picked this film.
Well, that is also Ryan.
Oh, I'm sorry, also Ryan.
You got to get it straight. If we're going to work, then we have to have clear lines of demarcation.
So, Thomas, what is 4x4?
Actually, better for our 4x4 on the season 13. It'd be better if we just didn't have names at all. If I was just host, you were a host, also a host, and another host. To go along with what we're doing now. We've moved into our second director this season. A 4x4 is where each of us come to the table with a director or creator or a series that we want to explore. We do 4 films by that person or that topic, and then we move on to the next person. We just did, last time I was on,
Robert Aldrich. Yeah,
and
that was mine.
Crazy
I was in France training troops to storm a castle. A ragbag group of footballers. But now I'm back, and
Did you eat at Les Passants? He 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 ha ha ha.
Is that the whole name of the restaurant?
Really good stuff.
As such, yeah.
Oh boy,
Man, kid, when you slow this down to 1/3 speed.
So we just did 2 films of Tsai Ming-liang, which was a director that Jack picked. We did his first film, Rebels of the Neon God, and then a more recent film, Stray Dogs.
With the Talking Dogs, Will Ferrell, Jamie Foxx. Good movie.
So Ryan, if you could tell us again why you picked Tsai Ming-liang. If you want to do a brief recap, a little bit about him. I know we did it in the last 2 episodes, but someone might be listening to this because they're interested in hearing about Goodbye Dragon Inn.
Yes, true. It's one of his more popular movies, if not his most famous one. He is a director of the Taiwanese New Wave movement, which in the late 80s and early 90s, a generation of young Taiwanese filmmakers, their country having recently transformed from a pretty brutal dictatorship. Artists were suddenly free to do what they wanted without fear of being captured and tortured to death as communists. So Tsai Ming-liang and Edward Yang and a few other very prominent directors of the time made a lot of moody, lonely, slow-paced pieces about life mostly in Taipei, which is the capital, I think. Pretty big city, though, what it looks like. And Tsai Ming-liang is one of the auteurs of the slow cinema movement. Makes a lot of very moody, almost art installation museum pieces with very little dialogue and He's made every one of his films with his longtime creative partner and muse, Li Kangsheng, who has a very deadpan face.
He does, and we've seen it change a lot with the 4 films that we've watched.
Yes, and yeah, that's the other thing is he says his filmmaking. He started out in TV and commercials and stuff, and he has said that his career as a cinema filmmaker is studying the face of Li Kangsheng and how it changes over the decades, and that is his whole thing.
Yeah, it was fascinating hearing all that stuff. The last 2 movies we did, because I didn't know much of anything of his background until you told us about it. Because I came in watching these second 2 movies kind of through a different lens because of that. So it's been a pretty fascinating 4-film journey.
And Jackie probably covered this on the previous podcast, but how did you encounter Tsai Ming-liang?
My mom used to work at the Portland State Library, RIP, and when COVID hit, she brought home a giant stack of like all of their DVDs because they were going to be closed for a couple months, and Rebels of the Neon God and Goodbye Dragon Inn and The River were in that pile. And
Thomas, we all talked about the movies we watched last week, and I think it was the first time for Ryan and I. Annabelle was also on those episodes. But what is your experience with Tsai Ming-liang? And then after you talk about these 2 movies, we can go around the horn, see if any of us had seen them before, other than Jack.
Yeah. I did not know that he had movies or any of these movies. They weren't on my radar whatsoever. For Stray Dogs, I was pretty surprised he was able to get that Cabbage Patch Doll product placement in there. Seemed a little late, like a little bit behind the curve, but who knows? I am not an aficionado or typically a fan of slow cinema, which would include Gus Van Sant's trilogy of slow stuff. So it's not surprising that this wasn't in front of me. It wasn't recommended to me by any algorithms or friends.
Right.
So, so for this week, if we haven't stated it already, we watched Goodbye Dragon Inn from 2003 and Days from 2020. These films having, of course, in common someone sitting in a chair and staring. Raining outside, a scene in a bathroom, somebody gets stuck in their back by a piece of metal. Someone navigates around other people when they're walking. People smoke indoors. Gay men touch bodies. One more so than the other. Like Days, I think, is a little bit more graphic than just the casual cruising in Goodbye Dragon Inn. Oh, and somebody has an injury that affects how they walk.
Ooh, very good.
Nice.
Did anything else come out in 2003? Any other movies?
Oh, plenty of movies, but we covered... So in 2003, you might have been able to watch Goodbye Dragon Inn. You could also have watched, if you were watching television, I guess, the Maldonado Miracle from our Selma Hayek series, but also Once Upon a Time in Mexico, also from Selma Hayek.
Boo.
Or Daredevil, whenever we covered Affleck. Angels in America, if you had HBO, I guess, as well.
Woo! Classic.
And unfortunately, Mystic River.
Hey.
That's a good one.
Hey, come on.
That's okay.
It's okay for Clint.
Yeah. Tim Robbins way overacted, did not deserve that Oscar, but
yeah,
that was another episode a long time ago.
The thing that I will always love about Mystic River is the last scene reveal, that kind of Laura Linney is the mastermind behind all of this. Like she is the true gangster.
Oh, true. That's a great scene.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway,
so the last 2 movies we talked about, we also went around as to how we watch these movies. These are a little more obscure than the Aldriches we watched and a lot of movies that we watch. And Jack and I had particular difficulty with Rebels that we talked about. So where did everybody get these two movies to watch? How did you do it?
Well, I'll go first, but you guys better back me up.
Okay.
All right. We know this has
Right.
been a bit for years now. So get
I'm on
ready. Don't slow cinema this.
Okay.
All right. I saw both of these films thanks to Multnomah County Library.
Shout out!
All right. Goodbye Dragon Inn was actually for Stray Dogs. I discovered this, but it was reinforced many times with Goodbye Dragon Inn that Canopy, which is how I saw it, does not have a 2x or a 4x play speed. Nor does it have a fast forward button if you're watching it through Apple Play. So that was fun to discover. And then County Library has a two. Multnomah County Library has a 2-disc Blu-ray for Days,
which you were able to get to us that we watched last night. So
well, you're not supposed to, when you check something out from the library, you're not supposed to share it amongst people. So let's just say...
Wait, what do you mean? Family?
Yeah.
Is that allowed?
Family?
But
yeah, I'm allowed in Portland. Like,
Okay.
they haven't completely erased them.
The Blu-ray did not cross state lines. Let's say that. Or county lines.
Or a river that separates two states.
Or The River, the film by Tsai Ming-liang.
Yeah. Ryan, how did you watch these movies?
With
my eyes.
I got Goodbye Dragon Inn from the wonderful nonprofit Movie Madness in Portland.
Shout out.
Shout out.
Over 80,000
assholes
videos on offer. And I bought Days off of iTunes because of laziness and that house has COVID, so I'm trying not to leave too much.
Dude, and now you can rewatch it whenever you want.
Yeah, that was that was the worst no spoilers, but of all the things that could have happened with how I watched these films and where I spent my money, that was the worst of all possible choices.
So you weren't able to rent it? You had to buy it? Or you just chose to buy it?
I could rent it because of the nature of the movie. I can't really watch it when other people are around and really
that makes sense.
Get into
because
it.
Because it might fall asleep on you?
Good Lord.
So with having the wife home with COVID and the kids been home more than usual because of that as well, a 48-hour rental was not going to do the trick.
Gotcha.
And from seeing Stray Dogs, I thought, reading the log line, like, this actually could be the best one because Stray Dogs description is so specific and a totally different movie than what you get. Like a very specific definition of a totally different movie than what you receive. So I was hoping Days was going to be kind of the same.
Gotcha. We saw Canopy's version of Goodbye Dragon Inn as well.
I actually watched it on Internet Archive, and this one did have the subtitles.
It didn't?
It did.
Okay, good. Yeah. Okay. So Canopy for Goodbye Dragon Inn. We didn't even discuss what Goodbye Dragon Inn is about.
Oh, did you think the episode was over, Ken?
Yeah, we haven't even got to it. 15 minutes. Our episode, we have 15 minutes. We got 30 seconds. Then the episode's over. Special thanks to AI.
Special thanks to AI.
Weird AI.
Oh, no, just AI. He's just
okay.
going by AI now.
Shout out AI.
Yeah, let's ask ChatGPT what this movie's about.
I found it fascinating that the description in Letterboxd and IMDb, and then I broke one of my rules when watching this kind of movie for the podcast, and I watched the film critics introduction, and all three of those things give you a plot that like a central plot detail that I did not actually see in the film we watched. Maybe I missed something subtle.
Which is
Well, if
what?
you blink, it just
That-
shoots by. You'll.
This
You-
is the last night that one of Taipei's grand movie palaces is open before it will be closed to be remodeled.
Oh,
And
yeah.
they are showing Dragon Inn because of its sentimental value to the community over as a long beloved classic. I didn't. The opening kind of gives you a little bit of the film Dragon Inn and the history of this place you're in. But as far as it closing to be remodeled and stuff, like I didn't get any of that, and maybe I missed something. But
Interesting.
I didn't get the closing part until the end, where it said business closed.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, that I see. Now it all makes sense.
yeah,
I always forget that it doesn't show that until the very end of the movie.
yes, I guess I somehow missed that bit of the ending.
It's very brief.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then we have Chen Xiang Chiai, the woman with the clubfoot.
Yeah.
And then maybe the manager / box office. She was in Stray Dogs.
Yes, that's
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
That's right. And
Is she the person who smells meat in Stray Dogs?
Yeah, well, she thinks the meat is bad, but it's the kid that's gross.
It's the kid that's bad.
Yeah, like, what does that smell? Is the meat bad? Oh, it's a little kid.
Oh my god!
We get lots of returning characters. Li Kangsheng obviously plays the projectionist, and then the dad from
Yes.
Rebels and The River is in
Uh-huh.
this as well. He is also one of the actors in the original Dragon Inn movie.
Oh, I mean, just to clarify, because
I-
I'm not trying to be pedantic, but when you say returning characters, I think you mean actors. These aren't, or are they the same character as well? Would you say?
Li Kangsheng plays. So every character that he plays in all 13 of these Tsai Ming-liang movies have the same name, which is Little Kang.
Okay.
Which is what Tsai Ming-liang refers to him as affectionately in real life. And so he is sort of playing the same character in all of these movies. Ryan, I think you said last week in Stray Dogs, you kind of thought that was the ending of the character from Rebels of the Neon God. Like they could be in the Dennis Hopper way that his character from Easy Rider returns in Out of the Blue if he hadn't died at the end of Easy Rider. I think that's sort of what Tsai Ming-liang is doing with this long-running film project, filming him over the years. He's kind of supposed to be the same character and kind of a reflection of how he is in real life, but also kind of different every time.
And this is it did remind me a little of the Man with No Name trilogy, and then even like Once Upon a Time in the West and some in Leone's other works, you can see how it's kind of the same character, even if the actor changes.
Ooh, yeah.
But it's also something fascinating, I think, to talk about as we wrap up this director and stuff is, are these, how do I want to put it? Well, like, to me, particularly with Goodbye Dragon Inn, I would argue that it's almost a cinematic essay, that it's not really meant... I think all of his movies, there's just the thinnest layer of narrative on top to make you say, like, this is a fictional movie that I enjoy when I go to the cinema, and I treat it like these other movies that I see. But mostly I think he does, like, cinematic essays, and I don't even really think of the main guy as a character anymore. It's like... they're a series of art pieces to me almost, or something.
I will say that when the movie started, I knew exactly who was going to be playing the projectionist. There's no doubt. It's like, I know who that guy is. And then they hit it pretty much till the end, but I knew who was going to be the entire time.
Yeah. Ryan, I think that's very good. That's a very good thesis. And I think Tsai Ming-liang would be very happy to hear you say that.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah.
I was shocked. I guess I don't know if we talk about the plot with these, but I was very surprised when this movie opened with fanfare. It sounded like a movie and a voiceover. I was like, oh shit, am I going to watch a movie? And instead I was watching a film.
You were watching people watching a movie.
Yeah.
Which is evidently Jason, former guest and weird AI compatriot, Jason, Dragon Inn is one of his favorite films.
Oh,
Okay.
really?
I'm going to be excited to watch it after knowing what his other movies were like, and knowing that Dragon Inn was a real movie that was referenced in the title. I thought it was 50-50 that it could have been like a junk movie, and that was part of the story is that people like this terrible movie, but evidently it is like a Taiwanese classic.
Yeah. You could definitely see that.
And it violates that cardinal rule. Well, maybe I don't want to give my opinion on the film.
Is it your cardinal rule? Don't
My cardinal rule.
A better movie in your movie.
Yes.
But it's not mentioning a movie in passing, like in what was that Dev Patel movie where they're like, hey, do you like John Wick? And then they show him a bunch of guns, like something fucking ridiculous like that. It's a movie about, if anything, I hate the phrase love letter to movies. I think that phrase is yeah, exactly. But if anything was a love letter to movies, it would be this movie.
Well, and maybe we should get into opinions, because Thomas, I think you and I are going to have a lot of very similar thoughts and maybe very different feelings.
Can I go into which director came up? The director that you will never guess when I was watching this.
Okay.
I think
are we supposed to spend time trying to guess?
Very slowly, yeah. So we could all just stare off for 10 minutes.
Oh my God.
I'll edit it out. Don't worry. No, I was thinking of
Schumacher.
No, it's this film is a mosaic, so it's different characters. They're all centered around a movie house that's closing. There's some nostalgia,
like a Last Picture show
with actors from the movie, and then you have almost a slapstick of a Japanese tourist cruising in the theater, in the bowels of the theater, and backstage, and then you have kind of a peculiar lady who didn't read the want ads very well when it said must like stairs, wandering around the theater, making sure everything is running correctly, making sure the stalls are empty, whatever. And then you have stuff like the lady eating the peanuts. This is what it reminded me of: a Robert Altman movie without any dialogue.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, particularly one of his mid to late 70s art flirtations.
Okay, so it's not that weird. Yeah,
I do think it has a relationship to films like Popeye as well, Thomas. But,
oh, really?
Yeah, but that's maybe a more convoluted take than we have time to get into today.
So there's barely any dialogue of the characters that are at the theater. Almost all the dialogue here is from the movie Dragon Inn, and we don't get any dialogue from a character in the movie, I think, till 45 minutes into it, where the one guy says this theater is haunted.
Yeah.
I think the exact line is, did you know that this theater is haunted? This theater is haunted.
Yes. And then the guy's like, I'm Japanese. And he goes, sayonara. So he didn't even understand what he was saying. And that's almost it until the very end when the two actors, which was surprisingly emotional to me. I was not expecting that at all.
I'm so glad that they are who I thought they were as soon as they showed up in the movie. I was like, oh, are those actors from the original? You know, it was very moving.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. Well, that was it.
I don't know.
Has anyone here seen the original Dragon Inn?
No.
I'm going to very, very quickly.
Like while we're doing this podcast,
I'm watching.
We're just going to stare.
Actually, I have the Blu-ray up, and I'm watching it on 1.5 speed right now.
Cool.
No, not at all. An interesting note that I found out from Jason about Dragon Inn is that is the movie that invented the woo-ha, maybe I'm saying that wrong. The wushu, the flying martial arts Chinese thing, and they jump on trampolines to get the effect.
Yes. Yeah, and King Hu, the director of that movie, was like the pioneer of that genre in the late 60s and early 70s. The other one he directed was A Touch of Zen, which I have not seen either. But
Jason said that was his second favorite of this director's.
Okay.
Nice. Yeah.
And what does Jason think about Goodbye Dragon Inn?
He hasn't seen it. but he's going to now. I don't think he knew it existed before I mentioned it yesterday.
All right, I think we should just get this out of the way and get to opinions. I think
Yeah.
we might have some difference of opinion here today. Thomas, you weren't here for the first two episodes, so let's start out with you and your wisdoms.
I mean, you're just asking what I thought about this film.
Yeah.
I don't know. Stray Dogs had 3 writers on it, and I think this one just had 1. You could tell because of the dialogue is lacking. I honestly don't fully. Here's what I want to say, Jack. I think that you were very brave to make this your director for the 4x4, and I am very interested to see this film through your eyes, or all the films through your eyes. Because it's not something that it's not how I normally sit down to watch a film, especially if I'm not in a theater, like if I'm at the house, because these films really drained my phone battery looking up other stuff.
Jesus.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a shift. I talked about this a little bit last week, but from his 90s work, I think this movie onward, he has done a lot more museum pieces and art installations, and I think his film work started leaning a lot more towards that, especially with Days, which we'll get into. But he is definitely of the opinion that his movies are meant to be watched in a theater with other people or at a museum. He doesn't think you should watch his movies at home, which of course you're going to. No, you're not gonna. The Hollywood theater isn't always going to be playing his movies. So,
I mean, I did find my person if I'm jet lagged on an international flight to watch, because it would put me straight to sleep. No, all kidding aside, I think I think that this film would feel differently. And I think I had some of this with Nolan as well, but this film especially would feel differently if I'm in a theater watching people in a theater watch the film.
Mm-hmm.
And all the noises in the theater become part of it, a little bit like a Cage composition.
Yes.
Not a John Cage composition where like it's a little bit more of an immersive experience perhaps. And when the film ends, then it also ends for like you as the viewer having to leave and having that some maybe like a recursive experience. Very different than watching it on Canopy with my phone out.
I will say I am probably a little bit biased because a couple years ago, my eldest sibling, Annabelle, shout out, came back from Italy after being there for almost a year. And a couple days later, we went and saw this at the Hollywood together. And someone kept falling asleep in the audience and snoring extremely loud. And random people throughout the movie would come and like wake him up and be like, "Hey, you're snoring." And he just kept falling back asleep. And it was almost like a Megalopolis, like planted actor thing to make the experience more immersive.
Yeah.
But then after that, the movie was over and it was dark out, and we walked back to the Max and it was raining, and it was like, it was such a perfect experience. And I've seen this movie a few times. This would be my 3rd time watching it, but that was definitely the best movie theater experience I've ever had in my life.
Wait, just for the eagle ear listener who's not familiar with Portland and the Portland metro area, when Jack says he walked to the Max, he wasn't saying like he was like
power walking.
This movie got me so hyped.
Speed walked the Lloyd.
The Max is our transportation system.
Yes.
Wow. So like one of your best theater experiences then.
Yeah.
That's a great story, Jack. Thanks for sharing.
You're welcome. But I the first time I watched on DVD, and I thought it was just as effective. I don't find this. I could see how you could find Days boring. I could definitely see how someone could find that a slog. But this movie is so full of these little. It started off as he learned that this movie theater was closing after he screened one of his films there, and so he wanted to make a couple short films taking place in the theater, and that grew to be a narrative film. And so this is filled with so many little short stories, some of which are just one shot, and they're mostly really funny. and some of them are kind of spooky and some of them are sad. But it's all of these little tableaus of the funny, weird, bizarre things that are going on while this movie is being showed. I honestly can't see how anyone could find it boring. Sorry, Thomas.
Yeah.
Wow.
I think that might be a little bit of my experience, and part of it is nostalgia for me, because I've shared this story before. I worked at the Guild Theater in downtown Portland in the late 90s, 2 days a week. It's not there anymore. But this brought up so many memories from working in that theater and how old and creaky it was. The reel-to-reel that they run in that, holy shit, man. I was just like flooded with them. And all the weird shit that happens in the audiences. Like, this is downtown Portland, so there's a lot of people that you'd wake up that passed out drunk, or people would be doing stuff they shouldn't be doing in theater.
Wait,
it was run down and
peanuts or sunflower seeds? Smoking?
Yes. Yeah, all that stuff.
Not using the urinal that's like further away from somebody else, but instead using the closest urinal to another man?
Yes, with apparently the biggest bladders in the world.
Holy shit. Those bladders, it's like I just watched Carrie. It's like the clapping in Carrie when she wins. It just keeps going on and on. It's like Leslie Nielsen in 33 1/3 or whatever, where he's hot mic'd and he's just pissing. But to me, no comedic effect. Just like the longest piss takes ever.
Yeah. So what Thomas is referring to is there's a segment of this movie with a Japanese tourist, and he's awkwardly trying to cruise or get cruised, and he does a lot of stuff with other people in the auditorium, like getting up and sitting next to them and getting up and sitting next to someone else. He goes into the bathroom, which, shout out to Taiwan for these great stall doors. Why don't we fucking have to the floor stall doors in America?
Some places do, but it is very, very rare. You're right.
Yeah. Man,
because then you don't know if, like, when you're a serial killer looking for somebody, you don't know if somebody's in there or not.
They're always standing on the toilet, though, Thomas.
Oh, see, they always get me with that one.
Yep. Yeah, it never fails. So he goes into the men's room, and there's a guy closest to the camera, really shoved into a urinal. He comes and stands right next to him, even though there's like a row of 10 to 15 urinals. And then a third guy comes in and goes right next to him. And the shot is held for, goddamn, about 5 minutes.
And things keep happening in the background too. Like, someone comes out of the stall, and then a few minutes later, a hand reaches out of the same stall and closes the door. But the thing that really gets me about that scene, the reason I think it works, is the punchline is there's a pack of cigarettes and a lighter on top of one of the urinals the whole time. And then at the end of the shot, someone walks in and reaches over them and takes the cigarettes.
Yeah, and it's an old dude. I love it.
Yeah.
But no, Kim, when you say that he holds a shot for like 5 minutes, that doesn't feel atypical of any of his works.
No, but in this one, it's people standing in front of a urinal. So, I mean, we all have, as people have used urinals, a clock, a ticking time clock in our head of how long that should take. And when it gets past that, and then the Japanese guy is kind of between two other guys, and he's looking around awkwardly, not knowing what to do. It's so absurd, but deadpan. I don't know. I'm on Team Jack on this one. I thought this was, for an hour and 25 minutes, very short movie, totally entertained. I found it quite moving. The ending actually surprisingly moving. That might be my nostalgia, having worked at a now defunct old movie house. I didn't care if there was no dialogue, and the movie looked cool that they were watching, and the two guys.
Well, let me stop there if we could, because I felt watching this that there were multiple screens at this theater, but it seems like they were just showing the one movie.
No, just one screen.
Just one screen, because at the very beginning, I was like, oh, shit. One of the things that the director does regularly, I don't think the cinematographer matters for that, is that he'll have a shot which is close in or very far away, and you can't really tell because of the proximity exactly what's going on, like the space that they're in or who it is, because you can't really see their face or like what their expression is. And then sometimes you'll get a cut which is clarifying, and then you get to see from another angle, usually closer in or a mid, like what's actually going on. And so in this, I didn't know how big the theater was, but they kept kind of cutting in and out in proximity, and then it looks like a giant theater, but there's all these tableaus that are happening in it that don't seem to reference any other point in the theater. And so I thought that there were multiple screens and they were maybe showing different films.
It's a bit like sorry to interrupt, Thomas. It's a bit like what Jack was saying about the layout of the apartment at the end of Stray Dogs. That it was
Which
like,
I wasn't part of that. So would you help remind the
of course. He was saying, and I didn't catch this on initial watch, but I hope to track it again. He was saying that if you are tracking the apartment that the family is living in at the end of Stray Dogs, in its very long coda, that it doesn't really make architectural sense, that there doesn't really seem to be to get from these one room to another, and yet they do.
And that's where Kubrick ripped off The Shining.
It did seem to be a reference to Kubrick's The Shining, correct?
Yeah, this is something I've always wondered about watching this movie that I've never... I guess it doesn't really need to make sense for me because I just feel like I understand the movie on... Yeah, I'm on the same wavelength with it emotionally. But yeah, that's one thing I did want to ask you guys about, is what you thought about all the continuity errors and the theater looking different, and at different points it being varying degrees of emptiness, the amount of people there.
Can I share my opinion on the film first?
No. Answer Jack's question. I'm sorry. Ryan, answer Ryan's question.
Also Ryan. He's also Ryan. God.
No, go ahead.
Damn it.
Go ahead.
I've mentioned before, but I think I've mentioned before, but I studied movies at college for an obscene amount of money. One of the things that my the film professor who I took 75% of my classes from, one of the things that she made everyone do at the beginning of class was pick a movie in the genre that the class was about, watch it, and then write an argumentative essay about it without at all referencing the script. And all of which is to say that this movie was very natural for me because in a lot of ways it mirrors how I watch other movies. And all of that being said, this is like one of the 5 best movies I've ever seen. This is like top.
When you say it mirrors how you watch other movies, you mean you like get up and you take a long piss and you look around for a cigarette and someone light a cigarette, or what do you...
Is that a Chinatown reference? I read movies to the extent that I can by what I'm seeing. I think of the dialogue and character work as being, I try to think of it as 25% of the content in a film. And so the other 75% is shot choices, lighting, set decoration, blocking, staging, like editing, all of this other stuff. Because that's the way she taught me in school. And that was what I loved about her classes.
Yeah, you probably approach it a lot like music. It's not just the lyrics.
Correct. And it's hard for me. This podcast, being on this podcast has been really great for me, in part because I realize that I've had a hard time understanding people who really take the script as being very prominent, which of course is how 90% of viewers do watch movies. But I understand a little bit better about how a lot of people see movies that I love based on some of the things that you guys just casually say while we're talking about them. Yeah, so all of which is to say this is like a Mount Olympus movie for me. I think of it as a visual essay. I wouldn't consider it an entertainment, really. I think it is very entertaining, but I think it is about the fall of Western style capitalism and the role that movies have played in our culture and how that's changing, and how movies are made and how movies are viewed, and like the industry that supports all of this, why people go to the movies, what they're there for, what they get out of them. It's just like the most complete thought I've ever seen on what cinema is, at least at this point in time. It's like a snapshot. Not a historical catalog. But I know that's crazy because it has so little dialogue and it is just vibes. And it is, I wanted to say all that about my academic background because, to your point, Jack, I think it's very fascinating that Westerners try and glom onto this kind of cinema through film festivals and repertory screenings at the Hollywood Theater because I think of this as more something like The Clock, like an art exhibition, or the Cremaster cycle. That's the type of shit that I would, or certain types of monologus, certain types of documentaries, but it's not, let's go to it's to just totally go off the rails for a second. It's like how you find out that someone is doing psychedelics for entertainment. And for me, that's like, really? Like, there are all these drugs in the world and a lot of them are fun, but you're dropping acid for kicks? Like, that's just a misallocation of resources, my dude.
Wow. So one of the Ryans came with his A game. Well done, Ryan.
Yeah.
Well, I want to thank you, Jack, because this was, I shared in the last episode all of my misgivings and reservations I have about him and the way he might be read by Westerners. And I think all of that is still true. But yeah, this is like, I would have never, it might have taken me 20 more years to see this movie if you hadn't pushed this for the 4x4. So I'm going to watch it for the next 20 years.
It's not that long.
I don't know.
The next one, we may have to debate that one. But
Ryan, if this is part of your Mount Olympus,
yeah,
does that change any of your opinions for the previous two films that you would watch for the podcast? I don't know what your opinions were on them, but I'm wondering, like, does this elevate everything else with it?
No, this makes Rebels of the Neon God, particularly after hearing Jack and Annabelle and Ken talk about it, which they all did a fantastic job. I think that if I would have seen it in the 90s, it would have been earth-shattering for me in the same way that seeing Reservoir Dogs was, or seeing the Doom Generation was. But I didn't see it back then, and it felt... I was very concerned that he was going to end up being a very pretentious, and I go into more depth about this in the last episode, but who I thought was might be a fraudster.
Ooh.
I was suspicious of his motives, and then Strain Dogs turned me somewhat, and then talking about both the films with these gents and Annabelle really turned me. And so overall, to answer your question, of the 4 movies I've seen, I think of Goodbye Dragon Inn as like the top, and Stray Dogs is very near the top, but still a little bit ways down. And then Days being close. And I'll go back and see Rebels of the Neon Gods again in the future because I am going to be very interested in this director for a long time.
Okay.
But it doesn't change my feelings about that one.
Yeah, I think that this really came along at the right time because, I mean, we did Darren Aronofsky. We didn't do him, but we covered his films. We covered Christopher Nolan's films, and then with Robert Aldrich. I mean, we've kind of been steeped in, even if these guys are writer-directors, there's a business component to their careers where they're making a movie like Following or Pi is a calling card to be able to make something bigger. And there's a huge commercial component to how their careers have gone, particularly Aldrich as also a producer and a studio owner. And to come to Tsai Ming-liang after all these movies, who he's not making a movie saying, you know what, if this one hits big, I'm going to get a Star Wars.
Yes. Are you sure? Are you sure?
It's literally just for the art of it and expressing himself through the medium of cinema, and it's just been a breath of fresh air.
Are you sure you didn't watch the first Star Trek movie, the motion picture, and was like
slow cinema?
Yeah.
also near the top of Mount Olympus.
Star Trek: The Motionless Picture.
Yeah, fuck yeah. Give it to me. Stick it in my veins right now. Let me watch that and Goodbye Dragon Inn at the same time.
Speaking of, I did think that this made a great just for my viewing preferences, a great like picture-in-picture movie.
Yes.
Because there's almost no dialogue. I could just put it up in one window of the television and watch sports ball.
That's so funny. I thought you were referring to the way so many of the scenes, the action in the shot that's driving everything is the movie on the screen that they're watching in the background. Your joke was very funny, but that was like, as soon as he started doing that, I was like, oh, this is
yeah. Let's talk about that a little
shit.
bit, because the woman who eats lunch and has a limp and cleans up stuff, it's like cross-cut, or at least has over her, I guess, one of the hero or the heroine of the movie on screen, Dragon Inn.
Yeah.
And so there's some type of juxtaposition that's going on there. I'm just not too sure if it's like what the intended effect was.
Can I speak to that, Thomas, by talking about an earlier scene in one of the first scenes of the film?
Yes.
There's the scene where the Japanese tourist is arriving at the cinema, and he's walking down that long hall towards the camera, and to the right-hand side you see I'm forgetting the name for her at her role at the theater, but the lady who works there.
The box office lady.
Yeah, the box office lady. And she is in a bathroom, or like she's looking in a mirror and like doing her makeup and stuff. And it's a long shot. And the way he's walking towards the camera and the way she's framed on the right side in a very classical Hollywood glamour shot. Like she's checking her makeup and admiring herself, and the camera and the lighting is set up so that we are admiring her while she's admiring herself, which is a very common like Hollywood starlet effect. And then he's walking towards us and her, and this is set up to be a perfect meet cute moment. In a classic Hollywood entertainment. He's finally going to get to the end of this long haul. She's going to turn the corner. They're going to bump into each other. There is going to be an awkward giggle and a smile. He is going to drop his stuff. He's going to pick it up. He's going to go into the movie, but it's going to set into the motion this whole romantic thing. But instead, the long shot goes on longer than it's supposed to. He turns a right into the cinema without ever even reaching the part of the frame that she's occupying. She comes out, and we see as she turns the corner for the first time, we see that she has this limp because she is not a starlet. This is not a romance. This is the real world that cinema takes place in. These are real people with normal, boring fucking lives. And they come here for all sorts of reason. And one of the most important reasons is this is how this lady makes her living, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well
Did
said.
other people find that set up for this, like the same thing that Ryan said, there was going to be a meet cute? Because that passed right by me. I just saw a shot that was framed with somebody inside, like with the wall dividing, her washing her hands from him walking in. I was still thinking about the cat that was outside running around in the rain.
Oh,
Was it cute?
I think after watching the other two Tsai Ming-liang movies, I wasn't expecting a lot of connectiveness, I guess, between a box office lady and a patron.
Well, I think what Ryan is saying is, and forgive me if this is wrong, Ryan, not that is what you are actually expecting while you're watching it, but that is the intention of how the shot is set up. And I think that with all the stuff you were saying earlier about what this movie means to movies and to capitalism and the whole country of Taiwan probably isn't crazy that all of this is packed into 80 minutes. It's just you get out of it what you put into it, I think. And for me, it is just a really cute, kind of sad, kind of funny little I don't know. It's like a what are those chocolates called? Hershey's Kiss.
Uh-huh.
You just pop it in your mouth and you eat it, and it's perfect. That's what this movie is to me.
Yeah.
It's only an hour and 20 minutes long, and I like with Rebels of the Neon God, I went on a really long rant about it last week about all the symbolism and all the layers and everything that it means. I think that there is that much and probably more to this movie as well. But when I'm watching it, that's not what I'm looking for, and that's not what I get out of it. I get out a little slice of a life that's completely different from mine. And that's something I talked about a little last week with Rebels of the Neon God. What attracted me to that kind of movie in the first place was being lonely in the middle of the night and watching movies like this and watching the Wong Kar-wai movies about lonely people that live in big cities with neon lights. And that's just something that I will always come back to. I will always come back to this movie very late at night or very early in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
Well said, young Ryan.
Thank you.
I finished it early this morning, and it was just getting light. It was beautiful. It was perfect.
Me too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jack. Yeah. Jack spoke very well to why I think this is why I think all of his work, but this one in particular, is kind of an academic exercise. It is ironic and wonderful that this is also the most accessible and joyful of and playful of his films.
Yeah.
And the most, I think he is really trying to bridge the divide between his intellectual take on cinema and a more emotionally accessible thing. But also, Thomas, it's like ultimately any art, to me, one of the reasons why I don't believe in extra textual stuff, or I don't care about the opinion of the artist, is because all art is just you get out what you put into it. And I bring this Marxist background and this academic training on how to read films. And so, yeah, that is for me, it is an intellectual feast, but nothing about what you said is a wrong or incorrect reading. And I think if you told him to his face what you thought of his movie, he would say, thank you for giving it a shot.
Or he'd say, I don't speak English. I'm Taiwanese. Sayonara.
Then I just repeat my words in English slower and louder.
So I think that all of his movies have lonely people in them. I think this is the one where it doesn't creep into despair like the other three.
Yeah.
That it's kind of sweet at the end when, she's kind of hiding, watching the projectionists, because projectionists are all hot. At least I was in the 90s. Come on. And then it's kind of sweet.
It's warm up there. They didn't have digital. It's all it gets very warm in the booth. At Cinema Paradiso, they bring that out.
But there's a sweetness to it, to the loneliness and the sadness, that kind of cuts the despair that we've got in the other ones. I actually prefer the despair. I think the Stray Dogs is probably my favorite of the four, just because it hits all my despair spots.
This one definitely has, though. I mean, her whole story in the movie is she's limping around the theater, going up these long staircases that she really probably shouldn't be walking up, looking to give half her lunch to the projectionist.
That's it.
It's adorable. It's really beautiful. I do think that this is his towering masterpiece. I will rewatch this movie, every couple years till I die an early death.
You will.
But Stray Dogs is 100% his just best, just so fucking depressing.
I could definitely say, I think the other films have despair to spare. This film has less so. Is that why people are saying that it's humorous? Or I just don't I don't know if I was a listener listening to the podcast, I would think that maybe one of us laughed at some point watching this film. And I was wondering if anybody laughed, because I did not.
I laughed
throughout the whole thing.
Yeah.
The urinal scene is hilarious, and the scene where the lady, he's just learned that the theater's haunted, and this lady behind him is eating peanuts or sunflowers.
Yeah.
And her shoe falls off, and then she disappears and then reappears right behind him.
Yeah.
One of my notes was a goopy looking guy looking for sex is like an alternate dimension 80s gay sex comedy.
Yeah. And I laughed all throughout, and I can't remember when I started laughing, but when he sits down in the theater and he sits next to the dude, and then all those dudes are suddenly sitting next to each other, just the idea, like, not knowing what this movie is, and then he sits next to the other dude, and I'm thinking, like, oh, is he trying to mac? And then I think, like, is that me? Am I like some sort of weird pervert that I just assume two men sitting together in a totally different country with totally different traditions might be wanting to have sex with each other? And then it keeps happening. And I'm like, oh no, this is like what happens in this theater now. And he is having all of these men are there for this exact reason. And they're so bad at it. Like, they're so terrible at getting laid, where like, they're just surrounded by hard cocks and none of them can touch each other. It's amazing.
It's like a nightmare almost.
Yeah.
Where it's
Yeah, there's that weird scene in like the back of the theater with all of this like
boxes,
empty boxes,
Yes,
and they're
they
all
walk
like
around.
They're walking around. It really is like a museum piece that you'd see at a museum. People walking around each other and then squeezing past each other, but yeah, it is dream logic.
I did think that there was like this film. So at first I thought that there were multiple theaters, and he was going to different ones, trying to hook up. Was there any other women in watching the film other than the ghost woman? Were there?
I think at the beginning there was two women that were chewing really loudly.
Yeah, that sounds right. They were eating something, chewing really loud. Because it seemed like he was going to like the cruising section of the theater, but then it cuts over and there's an old man with a young boy. I was like, I don't think that's really going on.
Let's hope that's a different story thread. Yeah.
One of the amazing historical things about this, and I would assume this was on his mind, but I of course can't say for sure. This might as well have been Times Square in 1974. You know, this is exactly what happened to a lot of America's movie palaces. And when I was little in Arizona, I got to go. We had a freestanding building that was alone on this major thoroughfare, but far enough down that it's just like dirt everywhere because it's Arizona. And then just one giant building, and that was the one screen movie palace. But this happens everywhere movies get big, and it's a sign of a larger cultural shift. And so, yeah, there's a lot of really fascinating historical stuff going on. And at the same time, you are just watching a bunch of strange people sitting in a movie watching another movie, which sounds like the most boring thing anyone could imagine, seeing.
But you have to have a really good imagination for it to be as boring as this fucking film. No, I'm coming in hot, guys. I find it fascinating that you three like this film, and
I love that you don't.
I think we love this film.
This is probably top 20 movies.
So you're the low Ryan on the Ryan totem pole, Ryan.
I'm coming in with Oppenheimer and The Well.
And to be clear, Thomas, I came in hot last episode, not as upset as you were, but feeling like I might get there if I had to watch 4 of these fuckers.
Okay.
And we talked you out of it.
Well, luckily we'll all love the movie next week, and I won't have to argue with anyone about it.
So I guess the only other thing we haven't talked about is the projectionist gets his fortune read by a machine based off of his blood type.
And
his palm. Question he's asking, in his palm.
Yes.
And he said, I think the question was, what am I going to have for lunch?
And
then it was immediately answered by the lady leaving it in the box office.
I'll go with that. That's a good, yeah. I like that.
Yeah.
It's less depressing than in Rebels of the Neon God, where they cut away before he gets his fortune, which means he has no future or whatever.
Yeah.
I guess that was the other thing that I had with these films at times, because I did enjoy that. Like, oh wait, you had to tell what your blood type is for a fortune, and there's multiple of these machines. It wasn't just like an eccentric machine. There's like multiple fortune telling machines at the theater, where I'm encountering a culture that I don't fully understand. And I think I've mentioned this on the podcast before, but when I was in Tokyo, I went to a haunted house, and I didn't understand a lot of what I was seeing because the symbolism's different.
Yeah.
And so what was scary and supposed to mean something about possession and like displeasure of somebody's ancestors, somebody's family member, I thought it was something that was blue. Like, and so I'm wondering how much of this film I also I don't pick up on because I'm just I'm encountering something that I don't know if what's supposed to be funny or what's supposed to be a setup from something in culture itself.
I mean, I think, you know, at its base, Thomas, to me, what makes this a super art house or academic film is precisely that it gives you no clue how to read it. So I don't think anything about.
So you think that that's true? You don't think that like there's context that you're missing or clues that you're missing just being a Westerner?
I think if you are Taiwanese and you love the film Dragon Inn, then it might pierce that bubble. Similarly, I think if you like the awkward slapstick of the queer Johns, you know, those are things that I could see someone picking up on, but I don't think there is any reason to assume. I think this is made to be inaccessible in the sense that I don't think this guy gives a shit whether anyone likes it or understands it or cares to. I think we'll get into this more really with Days, but he's making stuff for him truly. And I don't even think there's context to what we were saying earlier. I think, Ken, what you were saying about the other 4x4 directors we've done and their experience of Hollywood and stuff, like even somebody like, take your most outre Western director, David Lynch, Gaspar Noé. These are filmmakers who want people to see their shit and want to make a living off their shit and want to be celebrated for making their shit. And I don't think he cares about any of that. And I do think being a Westerner who has lived under capitalism our whole lives and experiences all the art we love under capitalism, this is a nearly unfathomable idea. You know, like Godard. I guess Godard is someone that a lot of film lovers come into contact with who also, like, it just wants to be a film professor and doesn't give a fuck about everything else, you know?
Yeah, but I think we talked about this a little bit the last two episodes, but it's as cinema has grown as an art form, what you see are these people on the fringes who are just making art, borderline installation pieces, museum pieces, that their style eventually trickles down to mainstream cinema in some way, because the commercial directors are being informed by it and the whole movement behind it, and they're going to synthesize that into mainstream movies. I think I always bring Bela Tarr up because I really feel like there's a direct line between his work, Alfonso Cuarón and Gus Van Sant's early one-take films. And now almost every commercial action film has a super long one-take. They even call them oneers now.
Yeah.
And that was not a thing until, like, you know, Bela Tarr and other people who were doing these really long takes eventually got into the commercial space. I don't know how slow cinema is going to do it, but I do feel there is something about the artistic way he frames every shot. And if you step back from what is in the scenes, like, what did he do to get the shot of like the place filled with cardboard? There's a lot of thought and process to exactly how he frames things in this one, and particularly the next one, that I find astonishing from a photographic sense.
Yeah.
They're just beautiful. Every shot is so beautifully framed because they are so static. They have to be.
Yeah, Ken, and I'm so glad you brought that up because I have been hyper intellectualizing why I love this movie. But for me personally, Thomas, shot by shot, this is maybe the best looking movie I've ever seen. Just like, and I have very weird, we talked about this a little bit on the first one, like post-industrial, dilapidated, mildewy, water leaking. This is to me some of the most beautiful stuff on earth.
Mhm.
And from that point of view, like literally, I didn't have a problem with the shot length because I felt like, and I'm lucky enough to watch on the projector at home. It was like
Mhm.
being in a gallery and just looking
Yeah.
at a beautiful image, and that it moved and that there was dynamism
Mhm.
to it, and that dynamism allowed my brain to wander and think of all of these other possibilities rooted in what I was seeing and the beauty of what I was seeing. That is why it's so meaningful to me, is because few movies give me such space to connect with them on an
Mhm.
intimate level. But if I was watching in the middle of the afternoon and the kid was running around, or I was getting text messages, like none of that would happen for me,
Yeah.
There is, in all of these movies, there is it was stunning to me anyway. It's when the box office woman goes behind the screen and she's watching the scene with the female do they call them samurais or just swordswoman? And he cuts between them, and it's like the fastest cut of any of these Tsai Ming-liang movies we've made. And it was like, whoa, wait, Michael Bay take over for a second? But it's so meaningful, the relationship between the people who watch the film and the film. And I love the stippled look that you get, like when you're standing behind a screen in a movie theater. It was just fucking gorgeous, and a real surprise that he edited like that.
Yeah.
And it's one of the things I perked up for the film was that intercutting, and I was wondering if there's other things that I'd missed there between the movie, what the movie's doing and displaying, and how it reflects back into reality and the characters around.
Well, there is that wonderful shot, and for me, really totally different from how I took the really long reaction shot at the end of Stray Dogs. But you get that great shot of the actor from the movie watching the film and crying while watching it.
Oh my God.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And that was, I wrote a jokey letterbox review of this one, but one totally bizarre thing that I thought about a lot while watching this movie was Babylon, which I think is Damien Chazelle is trying to do a lot of the same things in his own very bizarre way. Yeah, so I thought that was a weird connection. A note I had that I didn't want to forget in relation to something Jack said at the very beginning. This movie shoots, if you go and Google Taipei, you will see a beautiful futuristic city way beyond anything that we're trying to do in America, full of neon and skyscrapers and development. And similar to like maybe Michael Mann's Los Angeles, like you can watch all of this guy's movies set in this city and have no idea that it is a thriving metropolis. It seems the entire city and country seems like a wasteland.
Yeah.
His movie seems like a graveyard.
I guess the other thing I was excited about this film when it first started, aside from having like fanfare, which would feel a little bit more like a traditional movie, was that unlike Stray Dogs, the colors are a little bit more muted. It felt like it was, I don't know if it was shot on film or not, but it felt like it was film versus the clarity and lack of, I guess, a little bit of artificial distance in Stray Dogs, where it feels very much like clear security footage.
Yeah, Stray Dogs was his first shot on digital. Goodbye Dragon Inn was shot on film. To answer your question about how slow cinema is going to influence mainstream, though, Ken, Paddington 3 is reportedly going to be inspired by Aguirre, the Wrath of God.
I believe it.
That's not something I made up. That's a real headline I saw.
No, I totally believe it. That's hilarious.
Wait, just because it takes place in Central America?
I guess so.
Oh my gosh.
Similar to how all of the Captain America movies are incredible 70s paranoid thrillers. You guys
Well,
are
it's one of
keeping it
them.
on board.
So, all right, well, let's wrap this up here, gentlemen.
Yeah, we should mention this week's sponsor. Thank you, Grindr. Grindr, fellas, it doesn't have to be so difficult.
Shout out.
And wait, that's it for the sandwich app.
Yes.
It does.
Okay.
It doesn't have to be so difficult, but it can still be hard.
Well done, Ryan Sr. or Jr. Wait. So we are going to take a week from Tsai Ming-liang next week because we're going to have our Halloween episode. We should let you know that in 2 weeks we'll have days. Yep.
That's it.
That's if you could also, if you follow us on social media, then you would get that update as well. We're on all the normal social medias, of course. But if you want to just hang with us occasionally, we do file complaints regularly on Theater Kit, the theater etiquette site, where we complain about people taking their shoes off, falling asleep during movies, eating seeds, smelling like urine. Oh, speaking of, we are guesting on Urinal World of Hurt, where we cover William and John Hurt movies. I think we're on the Big Chill Elephant Man episode. And you can find some of us some of us lurking on, you can find some of us lurking on Limp Dicks, which is a site that I started after I twisted my ankle running and started doing internet sleuthing. So, Limp Dicks, join us as we try and uncover and solve crimes from the comfort of our elevated seats. Rice, you got to keep your foot elevated. So.
You didn't, Thomas. You didn't think it was funny the bit about how he can't. Not only can he not get laid, but everybody who's in the movie theater is sitting too close to him and being really fucking annoying. I have felt that so often in my life in the movie theater.
Yeah. It felt real, and I guess comedy draws from reality.
Whoa, did we lose Thomas?
And that's no. I was just pretending like I was in the film.
Oh,
okay,
good stuff.
Hey, no, seriously. For I think every film that I watched, I at one point had to look to make sure I didn't accidentally hit pause. I was like, did I? And one time I did. During this movie, I accidentally hit pause whenever the woman is behind him eating seeds. I was like, did I? And I looked down on my phone. And yeah, I had hit pause. So that is the tempo of these films. If you haven't watched them yet,
Hit pause is what you do when you high five a bear.
Yep. Well said. Thanks to Weird AI, or just AI as we're calling you now.
Coming soon. I will have some new art stuff coming.
Ooh, new art stuff.
Not Weird Eye related, but there will be an art show in January at the Lloyd Center Mall. The Black Star Celebration, dedicated to the birthday and death day of Mr. David Bowie.
Shout out.
Which it's very convenient. You can take the Max there.
You can take the Max there.
We've come full circle.
Go to
the Max.
For Art's Sake PDX on Instagram if you'd be interested in submitting some art for this event.
Do it.
The whole podcast crew minus Ryan is going to be live podcasting and complaining about the installation.
I hope so. Magnificent crossover potential.
So again, we'll see you next week for Halloween. Hollow Green Room.
Are we going to tell them that it's Green Room?
Green Room.
Watch Green Room. Yeah, because it's fucking amazing.
Yeah, a little faster than the Tsai Ming-liang movies. All right, bye.
Snooze.
Yep, gotta check my fantasy scores.
Flash gorgeous.
Checking yours.
Flash gorgeous.
I'm not talking at you. I'm talking to you.
Flash gorgeous.
I don't want to hear about you. I want to hear from you.
It's 10-4.
10-4, buddies. Destroy. Kill all hippies.
I don't hate it. I just don't know why you're straight from the formula.
You bastards! You don't know it, Bob. I'm an artist! And I must reflect that in my rhyme.
The wushu.
Shout out.
Shout out.
Assholes.
Being on this podcast has been really great for me. Is that a Chinatown reference?
But you have to have a really good imagination for it to be as boring as this fucking film.